In this video we're going to discuss named ranges. So let's look at this example here. We've got a list of prices including a tax, and we've got a tax rate of 20%. So if we wanted to get the price excluding tax, the formula would just be the price divided by 1 plus the tax rate. So that's the formula. So if you would like to drag it down, you'll have to make this an absolute reference by pressing F4, and then if you drag it down, it works quite simply. But what happens sometimes is, for instance, let's say on another sheet we also have the same set of information, but this time the formula is the other way around, but we need the tax rate again. So it becomes a bit cumbersome working between sheets, and this is one of the examples where a named range could be useful. So let's go back here and delete this formula. So if you click on any cell in this name block on the side here, you'll see the address of that cell normally. So this is D2, C6 and so on. If I click on the tax rate, currently it's called B1. If you go into that cell there, you can rename it to say tax rate. So you are actually saying rather than B1, that cell is now known as tax rate in this workbook. And that's as simple as that. So now here I can say this is equal to that divided by 1 plus, and now if you press F3 you'll see all your current names. So there is tax rate, and close the bracket, and now you can drag it down because tax rate is a fixed cell, so you don't have to fix it at all. That will give your answer here. And if you're on another sheet and this formula, you can just say this multiplied by 1 plus, now press F3, here comes the tax rate again, click OK and close the bracket, and you can close, or you can drag down the formula. Anywhere in the workbook, if you click on this drop down box here, you'll see all the current names. So we've got tax rate, and if you click on that it will just jump to that position. That now so far has been an example of only one cell with a name. Now in this example I've got, let's say, products per region, and I want to add up the sales, for instance. So if I normally would say this is equal to the sum of, and you would select, say, North, close the bracket, press enter, and there you go. In this case what we're going to do is this whole region we're going to create a name out of, so it doesn't have to be just one cell. So let's delete that formula. The way you normally create a range, you select it, a range must have a name. So if you remember in our first example, that range was called tax rate. So in this case we are going to call this one North, this one East, and this one West. So the way you do it now, you select the range, and then in your formula bar you'll see there's a defined names portion of the ribbon there in the formulas tab, and here you can say create from selection. So you've already selected the data, you're creating it from that selection. Then it's going to ask you, in the selection you've made, where is your name? And that's why it's good practice to always put the name on top, and then you just, the top there was be selected, you click OK, and now if you look in your drop down you have tax rate and North. So if I click on North, you'll see that whole section becomes selected. You'll see the name is not selected because the name is just a description of that range. So in this case we can say this is equal to the sum. If you open the bracket and then press F3, you'll see your ranges, and I say North in this case, and I can close it and press enter, and there you get sum of the North, and the formula is much cleaner in this sense. Another way to create a range, I'll do East this time. I select the data again, or actually let's start by not selecting it at all. So you go to your formula tab, define names, and this time you say define name. First it's going to ask you what's the name, so let's call this one East. Then it's going to ask you what range does it refer to, so we wanted to refer to that range where the values are. This time we don't select the name because we've typed it in manually. If you do it this way, you can also say what's the scope of this name. Do you want it to be available in the whole workbook, which is the default and the one you would use the most, but you can also say this must only be applicable to a certain worksheet. So I'll leave it on workbook, and you can even write a little comment here. So I click OK, and now for this one, if I say this is equal to the sum of, press F3, and there you can see east comes up, press OK and close the bracket. Another way you can create this is also in this defined names. You'll see this tab called Name Manager, or a button called Name Manager. If I click on that, you will see the definition of each of the names. You can also edit or delete it from here, but from here you can also click New, and this will bring us back to our previous section, and I can now give it a name I want to give it. So I'll call this one West, and it will refer to this piece over here, and I'll press OK. There you go. The names you give to these named ranges here have a few conditions that must be met. You can't use spaces in them. So if you look, I haven't used spaces, but if you look in there, if you have like tax rate, you can't put tax space rate, so you can't put a space in there. If you really want words separated, you could use the underscore key maybe. Also, you can't have a cell address as a named range. So I can't have a named range called say I8 because there's already a cell called I8. And also the name here cannot start with a number. So there's a bit of the conditions you have to adhere to when you create names. If you want to add to this now, let's just do the West here as well. So this is equal to the sum of, press F3, this is West, and press enter. If this list now grows, so I'm just going to put some random numbers in here. So there you have some random numbers. You would have noticed maybe that these numbers didn't really change. That's because just by adding numbers at the bottom here, these ranges didn't actually automatically extend. If your named ranges extend or grow, you need to go back to the name manager here. Say for instance we click on North, and now this time we click on Edit, and if you click on here what range it refers to, you'll see it gets highlighted there on the side. So now I'll just create the longer range, click OK and close. Or what you can do is, if you go back to the name manager, let's do East this time. If you look on the side here, East goes to row 10. So at the bottom here it says sheet 3 B2 to B6. So you can physically just take the 6 out, make that 10. Select the little tick mark here to the side and click close, and that would have also changed that one. So what I want to show you here, it says North values, but just for this example let's change this to West values. If you use data validation, so data validation in this example I want to show you is when you have a drop down in a list. So let's say I want to see a drop down of this named range. You will see there is a whole data validation video later on, so for now I'll just explain how you use the name range. So if you click on data, then on data validation, and here say what value do you want to allow, you'll just say list. And in the source, if I press F3, my names will come up again. So this time I'll use West. I click OK, and I click OK again. So now you'll see there's a drop down there, and you'll see the West list. So that's the list before the extension. I want to show you a reason why I did it before the extension. You'll use a drop down for whatever reason when you want users to fill in the form. But if that list grows, all you need to do is go back to formulas, click on a name manager and say that West all goes to row 10 now, for instance. And now if you click close here, this list will automatically include a new number. So if you have drop downs, that's one of the advantages of having a named list. You don't have to go and change every drop downs data validation to a new set of information. If you update the name, the information in here will also update. Another very useful use for named ranges is in pivot tables. So normally if you do a pivot table, in this middle parameter here you would select the block of data. So same as before, I'm just going to take this formula out and retype it. So I can say, well, first of all you need to create the block of data. So I'm going to say my named range is going to be here. I am going to say created from this selection. Well, you can't really, because there is no specific name. It's not one column and one row, so let's just cancel that and say we're going to define a name over there. The name I want to give this is, I'm just going to call it my data and click OK. So now there's a named range, if you look on the side here, called my data, and it refers to this block. Let's do the VLOOKUP now. So this is equal to VLOOKUP, and I want to look for John, then comma, where do you want to look for this? And now you just press F3 again and say I want to look for it in your data, and then comma, I want to bring back, say, sales, which is the second column, and comma, I want to bring back exact value, so I put in 0 and I press enter, and then you get the same value. A very usefulness for this is, if this data has to grow, you don't have to go change or update your VLOOKUP formulas. You only have to go and update your named in your name manager. So there is a few other things, but for now this is the most useful uses for named ranges, and this is how you can change it. Also, if you have in a workbook now, like in this example, I've got multiple named ranges, you can jump between them by just clicking tax right there or my data, and it will jump to that set of data and it will highlight it for you, so you can see exactly what data it refers to. If you want to change any of the names, you can click here on named manager and you can delete them. So if you say let's say my data, I'm going to delete it, which will cause an error there. So I delete this, click OK and close, and now you will see it can't find the name you're referring to. And that's how you use named ranges in Excel. Hi, this is Anton from the Data Developer channel. If you've liked this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up below and subscribing to the channel. And thank you for watching.